Successfully deploying applications on the SAP Business Technology Platform, BTP in short, is just the beginning. True value comes from efficiently operating, maintaining, and scaling them. In this series, we will explore the different ways to do exactly that. And by the end of today's session, you will know how to automate your processes with SAP Automation Pilot and much more. A very warm welcome, and thank you for joining our 7th episode of our series Mastering Data Operations in SAP BTP. I have the pleasure of having here with me Biser Simeonov. Biser is product manager with 10 years plus hands-on experience in delivering multiple products for media, telco, cloud businesses. Currently, Biser is product manager for products within the SAP Business Technology Platform DevOps portfolio, such as the SAP Alert Notification Service and the SAP Automation Pilot. And with this, without further ado, over to you, Biser.
All right. So thanks for the introduction, Tania. Welcome everyone to our session today. And as Tania mentioned, we're going to speak about Kickstart your Ops automations with SAP Automation Pilot. So without further ado, let me share my screen and then let's go through the couple of slide decks, and then we're going to go through them. So, right, here we go. Right. So just to make sure that we are on the same page, during the last week, we have seen a demo, and also we had some alignment on what exactly SAP Automation Pilot provides to the cloud AOM for operation use case. And just to refresh and set the ground for the teammates who weren't able to join last week's session, I need to go through just a few slides to make sure that we're on the same page. So SAP Automation Pilot, it is low-code, no-code automation tool within SAP BTP. And it tackles multiple use cases. And today we're going to see one. It comes with ready-to-use content. It's quite easy to build an operational workflows with that ready-to-use content. The only thing you need to do it is to find the right piece. And as you see on that diagram, so in example, we can check the application API, then we can add restarting of the application, create an incident, verify an API. So all of that we can consider as commands, which can be built in a sequence. And actually, we can have an end-to-end operational workflow, assuring that our, in example, applications, databases are running at the optimal possible way. So how we can achieve that? I said that we have ready-to-use content. That's a big number, 300 plus commands. We're going to see some of these in a minute. These commands are grouped in catalogs. The catalog, you can consider it as a kind of category. So considering that grouping, we can find the catalogs with an ease. We can find the needed command with an ease based on the filtering of the catalog. And we are constantly expanding the content of automations. So more and more content is going to be provided by our dev team. And no need to say that that content that we provide, it is maintained by SAP, by our dev team. So in case an API changes, we make sure that the commands that we had delivered, they're up and running. So the automations are grouped in categories, and today we're gonna touch base on some of the core automations. When I say core automation, those are Cloud Foundry and the HTTP request related automations, plus in example automations which are related to the Jira and the creation of tickets directly in Jira. And that's a quick overview of the automation pilot. So basically what we need to know, I wouldn't spend a lot of time here, just what it's important to understand is that we have on the left side couple of actors that can trigger the automations that we design, being ops system or manual triggering, like we go to the UI, or we can build a scheduler, or we can have a webhook go directly to the automation pilot, then we can trigger the command. And here on the right side, we see the different, let's say, resources to which we can interact, and we can trigger that command. So that was the theoretical part. Now let's look what we gonna have as a demo today. And right, so here we're gonna see an advanced resource checks. We have a CAP application that I already had deployed on my BTP sub account. And so let me put that way. Why also we have HANA? That's a teaser for next week, where when together with my teammate Shraddha, we're gonna show you some checks and some remediations on the HANA. So that's just a teaser. Today we're gonna be focusing, as I said, on custom applications, cloud applications, but in our use case, that's a CAP application, right? It is deployed and it runs on BTP Cloud Foundry, and we are happy. We're gonna see that it works well enough, and we would like to make sure that once we are approaching our day two operations, the application runs in the optimal way. So therefore, we need to perform certain checks, and we need to design those checks to be executed by the automation pilot, obviously. Then if those checks are failing for some reason and we are able to detect that the application it's not functioning correctly, then we are collecting events, what exactly had happened to our application, and we trigger remediation actions. Actually, since that's just the kickstart of our automation, and we're gonna build all of that from scratch, the remediation is quite simple. We're gonna restart the application, aiming that and hoping that will be fixing the incident. But of course, also a teaser. In 2 weeks, we have more advanced use cases, and we have another webinar where we're gonna be showing more advanced use cases when it comes to remediation. So just as I said, as a kickstart, we gonna restart the applications. And last but not least, once we are restarting that application and we get the troubleshooting data, we also want to create an incident directly in Jira with keeping that information, that troubleshooting data, and assigning the ticket to our dev team so they can be notified immediately and they can jump and figure out what the root cause for that issue was. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'll stop with the presentation. Yeah, and just also a few words. We have trial, free, and standard version. For that use case that we're gonna see, yeah, you can go with yeah, each of these service plans. The standard plan, just on the standard plan, we have a Gen AI feature that it's not available on the free. So that's the only difference. And of course, the free one, it's not supported by our dev team, and it's limited in the amount of concurrent calls and the amount of custom commands that you can build. But for that use case that we're gonna see, it's good enough. So in case you don't have the standard plan, also feel free to go with a trial and free and give it a try on the automation pilot. Right, so jumping straight to our demo. All right, so here we see our sub account, and we have the automation pilot. But before going to the automation pilot, that it's our application. we see that it is deployed in the very sub account, and our space here where it runs, it is the dev one. And if I access our application, actually that's the backend of the application. It's called the famous bookshop SRV. And here, in example, if we want to consume the front end of the admin UI, we can do that. And here it goes. We can go and interact with it, and we are happy with that. So that's important, and we already had passed the release of our application. And now we need to make sure that that application runs correctly, and it is available all the time. Here we see that actually it has just one instance. That's also important. We're going to see in a minute why so. And the status, it is running. And also when I say later on, we're going to get some events from where we could collect those events. In example, if we click here on the left sidebar where it says events, so we can get all the events which the audit walk within BTP had collected. So an example, we see that there were certain processes here running, stop, start, and so on. As well, we would collect walks. The walks are collected here, but actually that's not within the scope of the current demo. So going back to the application itself, yeah, we see it is up and running. So now let's go to the automation pilot. Right, the automation pilot, it is already provisioned in my sub account, and it is a SaaS application. We need just one instance of the automation pilot in any of our sub accounts, and from that single instance, we can interact with any other sub accounts if we have more than one in our global account or multiple global accounts or even outside SAP. So it's really a SaaS, global SaaS application within BTP. And then in order to access the automation pilot, we need simply to click on that button here. And now we're gonna be getting into the dashboard page. Right. So just right. So now let's start with creating our first command here. Just before doing so, we see some catalogs here. Those are my catalogs, the ones that I have created. We also see here a link of provided catalogs. So within that section, we can find all of those ready-to-use automations, which I mentioned, 300 plus commands, which are grouped for those categories, being represented as catalogs. And in example, today, we're gonna get some content ready to use from the health monitoring as well. Today also, we're gonna get some content for the Cloud Foundry itself. So we're gonna get the events for our application. We're gonna restart the Cloud Foundry application and so on. So, and we can find these commands in our catalogs. And how exactly the provided content works. So in example, if we go and yeah, just access one of these. So in example, if we get with the list CF spaces here, we can see that for each and every command, we need to provide certain inputs. And then as part of the provided content, we see output keys. So the input keys obviously are needed. So the execution, when it gets triggered, it knows what exactly and actually where exactly that execution to be triggered. So an example, to list the CF spaces, we need the technical name of our Cloud Foundry organization. So once we run the command, under the hood of the automation pilot, we are fetching the data for a specific organization. And then, depending on our preferences, we can display the output once the command completes. And of course, we're gonna see the entire designing of the command. I'm just explaining that as a context to you. As well, we see a section here which says inputs, and within that section, we can create our own custom inputs, and we can store data. So, in example, if we want to specify details regarding our Cloud Foundry organization, the ones that I mentioned, it's completely fine. We can do that. If we want to store sensitive data for our Jira, because it's, as I mentioned, it's part of our use case, of course we can do that. So yeah, and once I say we're gonna create inputs, that's the section where we're gonna be getting to. Then what we see as well, it is the execution page. So here we see the latest executions within our automation pilot tenant. Yeah, we see some had failed. Most of them are green, which means that they have been completed successfully, and so on. And last but not least, here we see the scheduled executions, where, in example, we can set up how frequently the command, the ops command that we design, can be executed. In our use case, we can set it up for once per hour, but we're gonna get to that in a second. So the additional configuration, service account, content connectors, and alert notification and operators, that's related to more advanced use cases. And as I mentioned, we're gonna get to that in 2 weeks into our advanced automation pilot webinar. So now let's start with the creation of our first catalog. So what we need to do, it is going to my catalogs, and then I will be creating the name of the catalog. It's gonna be web. So that's a technical name. You see here that I also on top I also have the ID of my automation pilot tenant. So I go with this one. Then display name, webinar. I'll type webinar live. Here it goes. And now the catalog has been created. And if I go here within the section of the commands, it is empty. Also, if I go into the section of the inputs, me, most likely I have, all right, it is here. It is empty as well. So now let me create our first command. So I go to the catalog itself and I create, okay, I type webinar live. I picked it up from the catalog and I go, and here in example, I can type the name of our command, which is, let's say, check webinar live app. Right. So that's our automation, that it's completely empty. Having said that, I already mentioned that we need to provide the inputs for the command to be executed and then the whole automation actually to take place. But before that, we see here that we have inputs and outputs. They are empty as well. So obviously now we need to specify something that within the context of the automation pilot, we say executor. So the executor, it is a command from our catalog that executes within our automation flow. And in order to do that, and as we see, there are no any, actually that's a completely empty automation. And in order to do that, we should click on the add button here. within over again. I'm within that configuration, and within the executor session, I click on the add button here, and now I am specifying our first executor. We see as well that there's a green button which says here, and I click where exactly among the execution flow that command to be placed. And once there's no any executors, actually that's how to say, it's just a single option pickup, but we're gonna see in a minute that it makes sense to have that here button once the automation flow gets extended. So now, as I need to provide the alias. The alias, it's completely free text, so we can write it we can go with a meaningful text for us. In our case, that's gonna be get up state. Why? Because first, I would say, right, once our application is up and running, I would like to get the application state. What exactly the application state it is at that very moment. And then here there's a command ready to be used, and we're gonna export that ready to use command in a second, which is get CF up state. Here it goes. Get CF up state, and where you see that one at the very end of the label of the command, that's the version of the command. Sometimes we have a second release of the command if it gets updated over the time. That's the maintenance which we provide to each and every command that we deliver to you. So yeah, get CF up state. I go with that one, and of course we can go with a certain description, but I'll skip it for now. So I add it here, and now we see that actually, yeah, right. So now we have the inputs. We're gonna get the inputs, and then we're gonna execute the get up state, and we're gonna provide some outputs. But now let's look what exactly had happened here, because now we see a link to a command. So if we click on that link, we're gonna be redirected to the provided command itself. And why that's important? That's important because we see an explanation or description for each and every input keys which can be associated and which can be used in that very command. And then also we see what outputs we can get after the execution of that command. And so the input keys which are must have, they're marked with asterisks here. So what that means? That means that for a successful execution of that command, as a minimum, we need to provide the region, the resource group, the resource name, and the sub account. Right. Also here, we see that we have the password and the user. What that means? So that's a technical user, most of the cases. Of course, you can go and you can provide the credentials for your own user, but that's not a good practice. What we do is to create technical users. Actually, there are SAP notes how and guidance from SAP how to create those technical users in the context of SAP BTP. And we need that technical user because in order to get the state of a Cloud Foundry application from the Cloud Foundry audit walk, we need to authenticate. So yeah, then let's see what we can do. Right, we need to go with the region. So where to find the region? So I go back to my BTP sub account here. I'll open that in another tab because I would like to get a view of my application up and running here. And I go here to the sub account overview. That's perfect. And I see within the API endpoints that region actually it's at the CF AP10. That's the landscape. We know that there are different type of landscapes on BTP, and pretty much like you guys, you pick up the region and the hyperscaler once you create your sub account. In our use case, I had used AWS running on Sydney. Having said that, also disclaimer, Automation Pilot, it is available on four landscapes among the 20 plus, maybe 30 landscapes in BTP. But as I said, you need just one instance in just one of these four landscapes of the Automation Pilot, and then you're good to operate and automate your landscape, your entire landscape. So yeah, now we see the AP10. Then here, obviously, I need to go and specify that the region, it is AP10. So I could go and do that directly here, right? And the same, it goes for the resource group. There's also an annotation. And there's also, yeah, and I can specify it as a fixed the static input. So, right. However, that's not a good experience if we have more advanced use case and we are getting some other executors along the way, which will need the same input keys. Because in example, if we go and if we want to get the app events, we're gonna need absolutely the same input keys as these in order to authenticate. Same it goes for restarting the application. And of course, that's fine. I mean, if you like to go and provide for each and every step of data automation for static inputs, you could do that and you're good to go and it will be working, but it's not the most optimal approach. So in order to go with the optimal approach in that use case, we need to create inputs within our catalog. So let me then go to the inputs as well, and I will be creating some, which we're gonna use along our entire automation. So I click on the inputs here, I click on the create button. I know our catalog, it's webinar live, and then I can type BTP. So that's gonna be the name of my inputs, so entity. So I type BTP app webinar. All right, BTP app webinar. Let me put live just to make sure that I do not do a reference to another one. Right, BTP app webinar. So here, yeah, we have seen that we need a region, which is a string. And if I go back to the Automation Pilot command here, if I click on the edit button, I'm showing that just because that's our Kickstart, right? So in example, if we need to figure out what exactly should be the type, it's easy. We can access these parameter sections and we can see that the region, it is a string. And also when it goes to the right syntaxes for the region, it is CF-EU10, EU11, and so on. So in our use case, I already know what it's gonna be, CF-AP10. Fair enough. Then same approach, let's go with the resource group. So the resource group here, the annotation, that's the name of the Cloud Foundry space, right? So resource group, I have copied that over. It's a string as well. So I click here, resource group, string. And as I said, my name, the Cloud Foundry space name, it is dev. So I click on that. Resource name, right? So it is a string as well. I type here. It is a string, and resource name, it is bookshop SRV, and we have a sub account. Right? So now for the sub account, just let me show. The sub account, it's the org name, which you can take it from here, and also it could be the org ID. But yeah, so I go with the org name, and the org name, let me get it. It's here. Okay. All right. So what else is needed? I already mentioned that we need a technical user. So for that technical user, then I will be creating another input here. Okay. So it's gonna be stored in the very same catalog, BTP live and BTP technical user. Right. So now I click on the add button, and as well I am prompt to provide the user. So I go and I see here password, right? Okay. That's a string. So tech user password. Okay, let's go with the tech user, actually username. Tech username. And I already have created a technical user, and I know that DL. So that's the email of my technical user, which is going to be used only for that purpose. And of course, that's a demo technical user, which I will be disabled after the end of that demo. So I save it here. Just for consistency, I'll copy the tech username, and here I will mark it tech user password. Right, so due to the fact that I already have added the password into the name of the input, the automation pilot detects that most likely that's a sensitive data. And I see a recommendation that if that's really the case, then I need to toggle that button over. So what exactly that will be doing? Due to the fact as well that we now gonna store sensitive data, we want to make sure that that sensitive data, it is not possible to be retrieved or used by someone else who does not have the needed access to that. So once I mark it as sensitive, and actually I get the password, which I cannot share to you, of course, we see now that, okay, let me save it. All right. So we see now that the password, it is completely gone and no one can get it. And even if you forget it on a later stage and if you want to retrieve it, that's completely not doable. And having said that, also the automation pilot, it is certified from, we have like many different internal audits to make sure that we are compliant with SAP standards for security. So it's completely fine to keep that, this type of sensitive data, like credentials, the service keys, and so on, tokens as well, because like you can get with tokens along the automation flow. So from that perspective, that's completely fine. So right now we see that I have stored that type of information of inputs already in my input catalogs. So now let's go and actually create the inputs within the input section of our automation flow itself. So yeah, we need the region. Okay, let me go perhaps into the inputs here. Okay, so we need the region, and now we are asked to specify what exactly the region to be. So one option it is to say that it's gonna be a static one. So I'll show that as well. And within the inputs, we can specify that each time that the region input will be processed along the execution, we're gonna get a static input from the region input section. So I'll add that. Another option here, it is, okay, resource group. It is a string. And I can say that actually that's an input key. And when I go to the input drop down here, I can specify from which input entity I would like to start getting and searching for other input keys. So in our use case, okay, where that was BTP app webinar, let's see. Okay, maybe I need to refresh that because at the time when I created the input entity here, that command has been already created. So, okay. I go resource group. I add the resource group here and I say that that's gonna be an input key. Okay. BTP app webinar, right? Here it goes. BTP app webinar live. And here we can do a reference to the value which sits within the resource group itself. Right. So pretty much then each time that we get through the resource group, we're gonna get the default value from the resource group key, which is available in our BTP app webinar entity. And I will go with the same approach for the resource name. Okay, it's gonna be an input key. BTP app webinar live, resource name. And sub account. Right. Just let me double check that that's important because sometimes when you guys perhaps you're in a hurry or I'm in a hurry. So sub account, it's gonna be the key sub account from this one, resource name, resource group, and the region it's a static one. Just for visualization. Now the last thing that we are missing it is the password and the user. So I will be adding the password. Okay, yeah, it already detects me on the automation pilot that's a sensitive one. And if it's a sensitive one, the only approach that the only option that we have, it is to go with an input key. So I click on the input key, I type, right, where that was. Okay, just bear with me. Okay, so it should be here. BTP technical user, all right, that is the one. And yeah, we see that automatically the input key, which contains password, it is referenced. And the only thing that I need to do, it is to click on the add button. And the final one, it is the user, and it's gonna be an input key from this input entity, BTP technical user, right? And here, yeah, I go with the technical username, right? So I click at the Add button. So having said that, we have the inputs, but those inputs, they are not referenced within the parameter section of our command. So one option to do the reference, it is to go and do that one by one through the region. So I'll show now how we can do that along the way. So the region, we can type execution.input. And we are picking up now from the available inputs that we have specified within our input section. Right. But we see as well that we should be doing the same exercises for the other inputs. So I'll be quickly doing that. So we go with the resource group. Then we go with the resource name. Here we get with the sub account. And let's do not forget, of course, the password. So here we go with the password. And now we go with the user. Finally. So having said that, we are complete. We have the inputs, we have the needed reference to those inputs, and of course, we have the executor, which was already added. So now let's trigger that command and see what's gonna happen. Once I click on the trigger button, I see the mapping between the inputs and the parameters which are needed for that command to be running successfully. And I see a default value that was fetched before triggering the command. And actually what it says, that now, in example, for the password, we're going to get the key tech user password from input XYZ, and so on and so on. However, if I would like that to be overridden, that's completely possible, and I can do it manually. Also, another thing is that I already have mentioned that any execution within the automation pilot can be triggered automatically by external system or ops system provided by SAP. In example, Cloud LM, or in example, alerting engine as alert notification service. In that use case, it's but we're gonna see that during the in 2 weeks during the advanced session for the automation pilot. We can see how dynamically we are getting details from those systems regarding the application or database in question. That's a kind of event-driven automation. And automatically, because we know that, in example, if we have an application running in another landscape with another organization, in another name and so on, we need dynamically to fetch that. So that's completely doable, and we're gonna see that. However, for the kickoff session, we wouldn't be doing that, and we can click at the button trigger. So now we see a very, very simple automation that has been executed, and we see that it's green. Everything it's perfect. So let's click on the inputs here. Okay, just because I clicked a bit faster. So here we see the elapsed time. So it was executed for 3 seconds. We see the inputs, we see the outputs, we see the person who had triggered that one. Yeah, that's also a check of that execution has been completed successfully. So yeah, now let's look into the inputs. Here, the password, due to the fact that it is a sensitive one, I cannot get it. I cannot see it at any means along the execution. Then I can figure out what exactly had happened as an input. So I get those inputs. But if I click at the output, I see nothing, right? So that's not quite useful, because I really wanted to see what was the state of my application, because in future, if I want to model that if I want to model and extend my automation in order to interact with the application, I need to make sure that I have the outputs. So in order to do that, right, let me check and figure out what type of inputs I could get. So I go to the command itself, and then I click here on that link. And as I mentioned, here we see all output keys which I can use in order for my to design my automation. And I know what I look for. So I look for resource instances. So that's the current state of all application instances. Right. So I'll be getting that. And I see, very important, I can see the type of that, the inputs. So it's quite easy to me to model that. So I click on that and I go back to the automation that I'm designing as of now. I click at the add button and I type array. So here we see the different type of inputs, sorry, of the outputs that we can go with. I click at the array, and also here we have an option, in example, to be to specify whether or not that's a sensitive or not output. But in our use case, that's not a sensitive. I would like to see it. And then I can trigger it again, right? So I can trigger it here within that toggle. I'll be refreshing the state. Right. I click on the output. All right. So value it's empty. Why that happens? Well, no need to say that that was intentional. So the output is here, but if I go to the output within the command itself, I see here that the output values, they're completely empty and there's no reference to the from where that output should be get. So here we see an edit button. So I click on that edit button, and as well as an expression, I can specify what exactly I would like to display within that output. So in our use case, it's quite simple because like here we see just one executor, this get app state. So I go with get app state, then output, and then we were looking for resource instances, right? So I close it and I click at the update button. So now let's trigger that again. Let's see. I refresh that toggle here. I click at the output and here it goes. Now I see that the resource instances and actually I see 0 because I have just one instance and the state it is running. So far, so good. So that's really the very, very basic. We have achieved to create a very simple execution, to create inputs, to get static inputs, to see the outputs, and to run it successfully. But that was taking quite of a time. And also a teaser for the last session. We're going to see how GenAI could help us and could boost that efficiency. But also there are some shortcuts if we would like to speed it up. So in example now, I would like to get the events. And if I click at the add button here, now we see why it makes sense for those here buttons to be displayed. So in our use case, I first would go for getting the state. And as a second executor, I'll be placing the get app events. Fine enough. And now as a command, I know that I look for get cf app events, which is part within that catalog, the monitoring get cf app events. I click on that one, and now it's important. You see that toggle here, auto map parameters. by default, it is enabled. And I'll explain why it's important after clicking that add button here. So now if we look into the parameters, hey, we see that those have been populated automatically. How that works? That works because that toggle was enabled and we had the resource group, the region, the resource name, the sub account already created as input keys here because we needed them for the first step. And luckily the app events and later on the restart of the application, because like we would like to restart the application, in example, if the state it is not running, they use the same inputs. So now, as part of that command, I'll be getting the events. So let me go and see. Actually, if I go to the provided content command of the events, actually, there's just one output key, which I can benefit of. So I go and I'll be getting that events data, it says. Okay. And of course, I can name it whatever I want to be named as an output, but yeah. And the events data, that's an object. All right. It is not a sensitive one. I know that, yeah, that's empty and it wouldn't work out of the box. So I need to specify it, get up events, output. Okay, actually, after adding the output, the executor and the output, you need to refresh in order the command and the autocomplete to be functioning correctly. So now I go back and I type get app events output dot events data. It was an object one. Right, so let's trigger over again and see what's gonna happen. And if I click that button here, hey, we also see the events. Right. And since we are advancing with the time, however, I really took the time to show you the basics because like it's easy to show ready to use command that it's already modeled with all the logic. Actually, within the next 3 to 4 minutes, I will do exactly that. But the start of creating, okay, interesting. But the start of creating and designing your command, that is what it's sometimes it's really that requires time and it has a steep learning curve. But once you get over the tool, it's quite useful and powerful. So now I will be looking into a command that actually I had extended, and it goes exactly into the what I have explained. So now if I go into the that command, check up running plus report to Jira and so on, we see pretty much that here, let me go from here, I have the region resource group, all of that stuff we already have created. On top of that, I have done similar exercises for our development Jira, where I will be collecting the data of the app events if the application it is not in a state which is running. So this get app state, get app events, we already have created that. So the new stuff for you, it is the restarting of the application. So I have used the command as well within our catalog, which is that one, restart CF application. And here they're quite useful output keys. So I can figure out what was the previous state if I run that command, and I can use those output keys later on. Super important thing, it is the condition. So within the condition, I can specify whether or not that particular executor, that particular step should be executed based on outputs from the previous executors. What that means? That means that what I have done here, it is that I'm getting the output from the previous step, which is get up state, and then I look whether or not the state it is running. And if it's not running, so I have created that expression. So the operators it's set to equal, so obviously it's false. So that means that if the state it is not running, only then we're gonna be executing the restart of the application. And if we are restarting the application, then I'll be creating a Jira ticket here. So same approach. We have parameters. We have a provided content for Jira. It's super easy to be set it up. I can go and dynamically create the needed description. So for the needed description, what I was doing is like I'm getting dynamically the key from the resource name within my input section. Same for the sub account. Let me zoom it perhaps. Same for the sub account. And then I'm displaying after what is the state of the application before restarting. So as a next step, I had created.
Biser,
Yeah.
let me do a quick time check. We only have 5 minutes until
I have just one more minute. Yeah, Tania, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's the last step. So here I'm adding a comment in my Jira ticket, and I'm getting as a further debugging information the output of the app event step, which we already had configured. So having said that, just as I said, final demonstration, I will be stopping my application. That's the application in place. It will take something like 20 seconds to be stopped. See? All right. All right, so it takes a while actually for that application to be stopped. Let's just refresh it over again. Just bear with me. That's the final execution of the command that we're gonna perform right now. Actually, I will be triggering it and see what's gonna happen as well. All right, stopped. So let's assume that something happened and the application is not functioning correctly. And then that command gets triggered being manually or through a scheduled execution or through an external system. And now we see that we are getting the up state. Actually, those two steps we already have covered this. Let me just refresh. So now we are restarting the application. And if I go back to my Cloud Foundry space, I see now that the technical user that we had created, it's restarting the application. So we have used that from the automation pilot to authenticate. Real time, the application has been set to running. And now as well, we see the Jira ticket that has been created. So that's with ID 5311. And if I go here and I go with 5311, all of that information of the description, the timestamp, and also those events, actually those are the events which we automatically collected and automatically created the Jira ticket with the needed information. So that's a quick introduction and kickoff into the automation pilot and just a very simple use case on how you can automate certain data operations for your CAP applications. Having said that, Tania, if we have any open questions, perhaps we can tackle some.
Yes, actually we do. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I would like to hand over to Boris for the first question.
Yeah, thanks a lot also from my end, Biser, for that excellent presentation. And thanks a lot also to all the participants for breaking the ice and coming up with lively discussions. So we had several questions around positioning, also with SAP build process automation and for batch job scheduling and so on. That's all fine. We have one question from Adi. We all know. Thanks a lot for that one. So he was looking for a solution to work with Android devices, like PCI managed devices, where he would like to script user activity on devices to use it for performance load stress testing and so on. I mean, with APIs, of course, we might have options, but I thought I'd bring it up here, Peter.
Yeah, Boris, it's a good question. Perhaps we can deep dive into that. The first thing that it comes to my mind, but it's not really a stress testing. It's the synthetic monitoring in the Cloud LM, where you can design and you can simulate really through a Selenium scripts the behavior of end customer using front UI components. And then you can run that, but it's the main purpose of that use case. It's to make sure that business critical customer facing functionality from front end perspective as well, it works as expected, and it's not really the stress / load testing. Perhaps you could tweak it a bit and simulate multiple executions, but maybe we should provide a further clarification on that if we have something within our portfolio, rather than SAP Cloud LM synthetic monitoring.
Yeah, thanks. I think we might have the option to dig into that with Ali directly, right? But there's another question, right? Around monitoring timer in addition to Cloud Foundry.
Okay, I think that the sound was just strange for a second. Let me quickly ask the question. So does Automation Pilot also work for monitoring Kima in addition to Cloud Foundry?
Yeah. Also for Kima, we can provide commands, and I can share these in over YouTube if that's fine as a comment, as a link.
Yeah, perhaps in the comments area underneath the video.
Yeah,
perhaps we can do that. Perfect. Or if you have it there, I can quickly take it and share it in the, because we are now already over the time. So let me use the time to thank you once again, Biser, so much for your excellent presentation. And Boris, of course, for answering all the questions in the chat already, for your support. And a big thank you to all attendees for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session, and I hope to see you again next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great evening, depending on where you are.